I'm Ash from What Culture, and these are 9 awesome horror villains lost in unseen movies. 9. The Smiling Man. 2 AM, The Smiling Man. It might only be a short movie, I mean it's less than 5 minutes long if we're being precise, but no film is as genuinely unnerving as The Smiling Man. 2 AM, The Smiling Man was written by the brilliant Michael Evans and opens with a guy taking a stroll in the middle of the night, as you do. The silence is quickly broken by the shuffling of a strangely eccentric man emerging slowly from the shadows. He's oddly dressed in a vintage-looking suit, is lazily dancing across the pavement, and whilst we can only catch a hint of it to begin with, is plastered with the most ungodly smile. Without uttering a single word, he begins to follow the man across the road. From dancing to crouching to performing some sort of thriller walk, the man is always seen with that same creepy smile. Unfazed as our Roma guy swings from fear, anger, and then to all-out panic, this creep steals the 2 things we would least associate with a horror villain: a dancing, beaming, happy chap, and uses them to ramp up the terror to a whole new level. This smiling man will seriously give some lasting chills. 8. Art the Clown. Terrifier. If Pennywise made clowns scary again, then Damien Leone's Terrifier made them truly horrifying. Whilst it isn't technically his first outing as the killer clown, as that joy goes to the even less seen All Hallows Eve, Terrifier is truly Art's movie and treats us to some classic stalking, some feces smearing in artwork, and some blood and guts in equal measure. From slashing would-be final girl Vicky with a makeshift cat and 9 tails to literally sawing a girl up in front of her friend, the level of gory violence dished out in this $100,000 budgeted movie is both impressive and seriously unsettling. Art naturally steals the spotlight of most of the movie scenes, which is especially impressive when you consider that he isn't even the only lunatic present in Terrifier. He is a force to be reckoned with, and a perfectly designed villain that deserves way more than his lot. 7. The Cultists. The Invitation. The Invitation is one of the best examples of patience paying off in modern cinema, taking its time with a relatively slow pace, but rewarding the viewer with a deeply unsettling sensation, and then pounding home with an absolutely brutal finale. The film revolves around Will and his girlfriend Kira attending a dinner party hosted for him and his friends by his ex-wife Eden and her new partner David. Eden and David have recently arrived back from a trip to Mexico and introduced the group to Pruitt and Sadie, 2 people who they met on their trip. Because of the film's slow pacing, we get to see each and every one of these eventual antagonists take center stage at various points and show off their characteristics, personalities, and ultimately their motivations. It only adds to the discomfort of the film and the eventual fear they induce when they reveal themselves to be the real villains. That there is a whole neighborhood of other cultists in action by the end of the film that you can see in the distance only makes the premise that much more thrilling. 6. ChromeSkull. Laid to Rest. There is just something about the archetype of a horror movie villain, and a slasher villain in particular, who wears an iconic mask and never says a word. There's just something about the archetype of a horror movie villain, and a slasher villain in particular, who wears an iconic mask and never says a word. After all, silence is daunting, and when it's combined with something as traditionally ostentatious and performative as a mask, it feels like a contradiction in terms. Look at me, but don't listen, I'm shy. ChromeSkull might not be the star of the best horrors, though Laid to Rest and its sequel are far from terrible, but he certainly looks the part, and the fact that he glues his mask on hits that little bit differently to normal. He is a killer without prejudice too, and his classical weapon choice and fondness for brutality mean he really leaves a mark. And that name is way better than something plain like Michael or Freddy or Jason. He is ChromeSkull, man. No other average name will do. 5. Cathoga. The Relic. Just from the simple words designed by Stan Winston, you already know this monster is going to deliver the goods in whatever underrated movie it has unfortunately been bound by. And the Cathoga from The Relic absolutely lives up to that in all of its brain-munching glory. Whilst not a villain in the same sense as some of the other, more tangible evil on this list, as in it's not a human serial killer out for murder, the Cathoga is a monster that revels in its hunger for a specific chunk of human head, transformed from a normal man into a chimeric beast from consuming some bad soup that then hunts to eat until it dies or is killed, which is a hard mood. I agree. Bringing together all sorts of strange parts mishmashed from the animal kingdom, the Cathoga is a fearsome, predator-looking creature, and one that deserves far greater fanfare than the little it has been afforded in the years since the Relic's release. 4. Joseph. Creep. Joseph might not be some next-level monster with iconic design work, but he is one of the finest slashers in the making that the horror genre has been gifted with. Unhinged, unknowable, and absolutely unparalleled, Joseph just wants someone to come film him in his last days before he dies of a terminal illness, so his unborn son can get to know him as a father. Or at least, that's what he wants freelance cameraman Aaron to think, anyway. Creep is a character study of Joseph as much as it is a horror movie, letting us into this strange world of Peach Fuzz the wolf and Joseph's erratic tendencies that reveal nothing we know about him is explicitly true. Joseph feels like a ticking time bomb the entire time he's on screen, and doesn't lose any of his charm or interest in a sequel that sees him do it all over again. It's a crime that more people haven't seen Mark Duplass's masterclass in mugging to the camera. 3. Russ Thorne, The Slumber Party Massacre. The Slumber Party Massacre is one of the most interesting and unique slasher films to come out in the 1980s. Whilst it still contains all of the usual scenes of skimpy teenagers being picked off by a largely unseen murderer, there are a few notable features in the movie that help this stand out from the crowd, starting mainly with villain Russ Thorne. Armed with the now slasher classic high-powered drill, Russ is unlike his fellow horror villains in that he has absolutely no backstory whatsoever. We know he's an escaped prisoner and has an unstoppable lust for murdering, having killed 5 people previously, but besides that, there's really not a whole lot explained to us. Everything from his distinctive walk, his lifeless eyes, or the fact that he spends most of his screen time caked in blood all help to make this a guy who will never fail to send a shiver down your spine. 2. The Ullmans, The House of the Devil. The ultimate homage to your favourite 70s and 80s horror films, The House of the Devil combines some of the favourite filming techniques of the past with some nice modern tropes thrown in to ramp up the terror. The film follows college student Samantha Hughes as she takes on a babysitting job for the Ullman family, consisting mainly of matriarch and patriarch Mr. and Mrs. Ullman. Whilst Mr. and Mrs. Ullman, as well as their son Victor, are suitably creepy throughout with their unsettling personas, the House of the Devil scares are ramped up significantly when Mother is summoned near the film's climax. Mother is a truly grotesque, witch-like individual who commences a ritual harnessing the power of the night's lunar eclipse. She pulls all of the strings for the night's events, making even the stern and sinister Mr. and Mrs. Ullman just simple puppets for her evil, malevolent arts. Everything from a terrifying soundtrack to a hideous appearance is something for horror fans to marvel at. However, it is clear that Mother benefits hugely from the film's well-crafted, slow suspense and generally creepy storytelling. 1. The Moonlight Man, Gerald's Game. Thought to be impossible to truly capture in a film, Gerald's Game is the 2017 brilliant adaptation of the original Stephen King book of the same name. Deeply gripping with its edgy psychological horror in the first act, Gerald's Game really begins to amp the scares when the sinister Moonlight Man is introduced to proceedings. When her husband dies of a heart attack with her still chained up to a bed for sex, Jessie is thrown into a world of psychological torment and battles to escape from her position. The tension of being locked up on your own is scary enough for us to witness. However, the hallucinations that come to play with Jessie as the film rolls on are the stuff pulled straight out of our nightmares. Things get even worse for Jessie though, with a tall figure following and stalking her as she attempts to escape. The man made out of moonlight turns to not be made out of moonlight at all, a serial killer who is prone to stealing from corpses and occasionally eating the faces of his male victims. And just as one last sprinkling of chills, he recites Jessie's original "you're not real" line back to her when they come face to face eventually, revealing that he had been in the house with her the whole time and was not a figment of her imagination, which is even more terrifying maybe